Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to the Thursday late night edition of the People Show with Mark Walsh, your host and facilitator. My apologies for coming in a little bit late. I was just trying to prep um, for this brief wait, um, and I was reading my new book. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, my new book that I bought today. This is Eddie Glaude's book called um, We Are the Leaders We Have Been Looking For. This. It's a great read. I just started reading it. Of course, Eddie Glaude, who is a professor at the Princeton University of African American Studies, and he has written this book, little small book, great read. Um, that I certainly would recommend that you get, because it is much of what I talk about all the time. And thank you all for tuning in to the podcast. Let me say this: coming up on Monday night, on the Monday night edition of the People's Show, I'm going to have Professor Emeritus Dick Simpson on, and he's going to be talking about his new book that came out about the modern day mayors of the city of Chicago, from Harold Washington to Lori Lightfoot. We're going to be talking about that on Monday night. And also, we're going to be talking about the first year in office, Brandon Johnson's first year. We're going to be making some analysis about how he has progressed, and certainly how he's perceived to have progressed as mayor. And if he has followed through. And Dick Simpson has been a professor, and certainly he was a former alderman of the city of Chicago and a congressional candidate. And he's done great work since he has been out of office at the University of Chicago at Illinois, UIC, and in the political science division there. So he's going to be with me on Monday night. So make sure that you tune in for that on intellectualradio.com, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and X, formerly known as Twitter. My objective is to bring you with great information. So just wanted to come on tonight because we are approaching a very critical time. And each one of these elections have been critical. They have been transformative, transformational, and so now we are approaching our national election. And of course, we've had our primaries of our local elections in Illinois. Largely, our primaries are our general elections. People who win in the primary generally go on to win in the general election. So we've got to get more people to participate in the primaries and strategically. So, but we are working, building a block of an independent Black voting block here in Cook County, in the city of Chicago, state of Illinois. And the mission is to build and organize a united Black independent voting block throughout the city of Chicago, the county of Cook, and the state of Illinois, so that we can select, and elect people from within our own to represent and to self-determine, to represent and meet the needs of our people and our demands of our communities, from education to economics and everything in between. This is where we have to be, and we cannot afford, as Black people, we cannot afford to get caught up in the rhetoric. We have to be acutely focused. We have to be acutely focused, meaning that we have to organize ourselves together. We have to coalesce with each other. We have to be acutely focused on what the needs are, what our objectives are, and we have to be strategic about utilizing our voices, by utilizing our votes that um, represents what it is that we want. We have to make sure of this. Now, this ideology, and it's really not an ideology. It is old, tired talking points that come from the Republican Party, which the Republican Party has offered nothing to Black people since Black people decided to vote democratically when they just got tired of Herbert Hoover doing the Franklin Delano Roosevelt days. That is when Black people decided that, because the only way that you could vote back then was as a Republican if you were Black. So this idea that the Republican Party of today is the same as the Republican Party was, or the Republicans when Black people were voting as Republicans, it was the only way that you could vote if you were voting as a Black person. However, to use that argument is a distortion of history and certainly a distortion of the truth, and it's misguided in many ways. What we have to do is we have to get organized amongst ourselves. And so here in Chicago, we are building and institutionalizing the largest independent Black voting bloc so that we will have the power to not only select and slate and elect people that we want from our own, that we determine who candidates are, but we have the power to influence public policy that is going to be inclusive equitably for our communities, from education to economics. No longer will we accept the old adage is a little dab will do you. That is no longer going to be accepted by us. We can't accept it. We should not accept it. We have the power to change it. Where we are here in Chicago, we really have, I don't want to say a unique posturing, but we are in what I would say as a rare positioning, where we have in the city of Chicago, where the Black community is a little over a third of the population of Chicago. We have more than 662 registered Black voters, another 180,000 who have just become eligible to get registered to vote. We still are the largest single registered voting bloc of any ethnic group in Chicago, including Hispanics, including whites. We still have more people registered to vote than any one of those two demographics, even despite of losing 250,000 people in population over the last 2 decades. We strategically are positioned that when we organize, when we build our independent voting bloc here in Cook County, here in Chicago, in the state of Illinois, it will have national implications. National implications. But when we do that, we will then have the power. Let me say it again. We will have the power to negotiate, demand for the needs and our desires to be met. Now, we have to have a short-term and a medium range and long-term. 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20. So we have to strategically put together what it is, what our expectations are, and what we are calling for. We have to put that together. Now, we have seen many agendas, but we have to put objectives together. We have to make sure that whatever those objectives are, that those objectives are strategic and holistic to include education and economics. Education, healthcare, and economics. Education, healthcare, and economics. These are three main tentacles of making sure: education, housing, healthcare, economics. We have to make sure that we can impact those. How can we impact those? How does a community thrive? By making sure that the masses have access to a career, good paying job. In the city of Chicago in the 1950s, in the 60s, and in the 70s, 70% of all employment, Black employment, 70% of all Black employment in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, 70%, 70% of Black employment was in labor. Did you hear that? 70% of all Black employment was in labor. So that meant that a person who came out of high school could go 15 or 20 minutes from his or her home to a manufacturer and get a job, which became a career, a good paying job, that they were able to save money, to buy a home, to buy a car, take care of the children, take care of the family, take their family on a vacation, and support the local Black-owned businesses, the Black economy in our communities on the south and west sides of Chicago. 70% of all Black employment, let me say it again, because most people don't know this fact. 70% of all Black employment in Chicago in the 1950s, in the 1960s, and in the 1970s was in labor. When Ronald Reagan came into office, Ronald Reagan decimated the workforce. Ronald Reagan's policies, which I call Reaganism, destroyed and allowed for 20,000 manufacturers, more than 19 million jobs, 16,000 of corporations to move their companies overseas. That eroded more than 20 million good paying jobs here in the United States of America. It decimated the labor force in Chicago. We went from 70% of Black employment in manufacturing and labor to 28% from 1980 to 1987, all under Reagan's policies. Many of our Black businesses are gone. Our smaller to mid-sized Black businesses had to end up leaving. Reagan introduced this whole global economy and stopped enforcing the antitrust laws, which kept corporations from becoming monopolies, swallowing up Okay, folks, sorry about that. We had some internet connection problems. All right, so as I was saying, that a lot of this had to do with policies, and it does matter who is in office. So the progressive ideas and the progressive policies by far are better for Black people to have the opportunity to participate, the opportunity to thrive. Same with businesses. Under Republican administration, they like to bundle contracts where only large corporations will be able to take advantage of the contracts. Where under the Democratic administrations, they unbundle them so that you have more small to mid-sized companies that can compete and that will be in the position to take advantage of contracts at every level. So, and you can just go on down the line. Child tax credit, that came under Democratic administration. Republicans voted against it. All of these policies that have come out, the CHIPS and Science Act, the American Rescue Act, the infrastructure bill, Republicans voted against, except for there were some Republicans who supported the infrastructure bill. But by and large, most of the policies that have been passed through this administration, Republicans voted against it. Expanding the child tax credit, they voted against it. Who blocked the $15 an hour? Republicans voted against it. Sinema and Manchin are the two so-called independents, which I call independent Republicans, blocked you getting a raise that we could have lifted millions of people out of poverty. These are all progressive ideas that don't come from Republicans. So we need to make sure that we are strategic and that we are informed about the facts versus the fiction. And our job is to make sure that we bring you the facts so that you are informed with real information, that you can go and the people who are in your circle and you are trusted messengers to the people who believe you can give them the kinds of guidance and information that they need in order to make an informed, good decision. And it is our job to make sure that we're providing the facts, not the fodder or the fiction. As I said to you last night, I have grown very concerned about people. I don't know what their motivations are. So I can't and won't even begin to opinionate or hypothesize on what their motivations are. I can only deal with the facts. And the facts are that they're putting out information that is misleading information, certainly misinformation. I don't know if it's willful or if they are just acting out of their own frustration. You can be frustrated. And you certainly can want things to be different. You can be angry. But you cannot, if you are a person who have access to these outlets and people look to you for information, you cannot be a purveyor of disinformation. And disinformation is willful. Misinformation or misleading information is unintentional. But disinformation is a strategy that is put into place to mislead people to make either a social or political point. And sometimes it is hard to distinguish whether somebody is being misinformed or putting out misinformation, or if it's disinformation. They both are dangerous and damaging. So I continue to reiterate to you, if you are a person who is putting information out, make sure that your information is accurate Make sure that your information is information that at the end of the day you ask yourself, or you check the motive of what you're doing, because you're impacting other people's lives and you certainly have the influence to do that. So, so my point is this. Even as the viewer, as a listener, information that we give you, that we put out, you still should be able to verify that information by three sources, three legitimate sources. You should be able to go out and verify that. If you can't verify the information that you're being shared, it's being shared with you to make, political decisions, then that information may not, and in most cases are not, true. They just are not. That's journalism 101. Make sure that you verify your information by three credible sources before you repeat it. Journalism 101. It's a dangerous thing to put out information that is not correct. All right, so getting back to why I came on so tonight. And again, I'm going to be doing more and more so that we can provide you with the information so that you can be informed of why it is important in this binary choice that we have between the current administration and going back to what, on steroids, what we had from 2016 to 2020. So we're going to be putting out the facts. I'll continue to put out the facts about what this administration has done and how that is going to impact Black people, in particular, the infrastructure and the manufacturing. 272,000 people are working through these progressive ideas. Many people are Black who are getting those jobs, and those jobs are averaging $80,000, $89,000 a year to start. All of that came from progressive ideas and came through the Democratic Congress. So we can have our differences and we can talk about one idea or one policy or even some past bad decisions that were made by people who are in the Democratic Party. We cannot have and we cannot afford the purity test. There are no purists, not you, not me, and certainly not the people who we have as representatives. Who we have to work with, and the people that we have to work with are the people who we are more likely to benefit from, and the people who our community has benefited from, small or large or in between. That is how we have to make these kinds of analogies. We have to analyze these based on the facts, not on the fiction, not on because somebody has an axe to grind. And we have to verify that information. So you're going to hear, and I'm going to come on and bring you and read you data and statistics of the difference between these two parties And we can, again, cannot operate in this purist attitude. There is no pure anyone. You're not pure, I'm not pure, and certainly the people who are in public office are not that. But what we must do is we have to organize to make sure that those people see us and that those people are responding to what our needs are and what our desires are and what our demands are. So I encourage you, don't forget to tune in on Saturday for the Legal Hour with Judge Leonard Murray at 1 o'clock. From 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, we're right back here. We'll be answering all of your legal questions. You can type your questions into the chat, and I'll read it to Judge Murray, and he will address your question. Now, legal questions, but he cannot give you advice in any way, shape, or form, but he certainly can answer legal questions. So that's happening Saturday right here, 1 o'clock on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter, with Judge Leonard Murray every Saturday from 1 o'clock to 2. Make sure you tune in and like and share for another one of your friends and in your network. All right. Okay. So I just wanted to come on for briefly to give those encouraging thoughts and just something for us to think about, is to look for the facts. Do the research. Look for the facts, not the emotions, and certainly not I heard and they said. Those are the two biggest lies ever told. I heard and they said. Whenever somebody starts talking to you about I heard and they said, it's usually them trying to spread some non-productive information. All right. So that's going to be it. So look, you guys have a great night. And I may be back here tomorrow night. I'm not sure, but certainly you'll see me on Saturday at 1 o'clock right back here with Judge Leonard Murray. And then, of course, we are going to be back on Monday night with Dick Simpson, who was the former alderman and professor emeritus at the UIC University. We're talking about modern day mayors from Harold Washington to Lori Lightfoot. All right, that's going to do it for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time. Have a great evening.